He was a lawyer. He knew every loophole in the system. He had spent 15 years making sure no one could ever catch him. But the one thing James Whitfield never counted on was his wife finding a hotel receipt in a jacket pocket on a Sunday morning while doing the laundry. Rachel Whitfield was the kind of woman who made everything around her work. She taught 8th grade English for 12 years, raised 2 children largely on her own while her husband traveled for work, and kept a home that people genuinely loved to visit. She was patient, organized, and deeply loyal. She believed in her marriage the way she believed in most things, quietly, completely, and without needing constant reassurance. James Whitfield was a corporate attorney at one of Chicago's most respected firms. He was brilliant in the courtroom, meticulous with paperwork, and extraordinarily careful about details. He traveled to Cincinnati every week for what he described as a long-term client engagement. Sometimes he was gone for 3 days, sometimes 4. Rachel never questioned it. That was the life they had built. The hotel receipt was dated on a Tuesday, but James had told Rachel he was staying at the client's apartment, the way he always did. There was no reason for a hotel. Rachel set the receipt on the kitchen counter and looked at it for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called the number printed at the top. The hotel confirmed the reservation. It was not a one-night stay. According to their records, James Whitfield had been a regular guest every week for the past 11 years. Same room when available, always paid in cash. Rachel hired a private investigator that afternoon. What the investigator uncovered over the next 3 weeks was not an affair. It was something far more structured than that. James Whitfield had a second home in Cincinnati, a house in a quiet neighborhood with a garden out front and a mailbox with 2 names on it. He had a second family, a woman named Karen Simmons who believed she had been married to James for 9 years under the name James Merritt, and a 7-year-old boy who called him Dad. Rachel sat with that information for 48 hours before she called an attorney. Her attorney, a woman named Linda Cross, had practiced family law for 19 years. When Rachel laid out what the investigator had found, Linda told her she had handled thousands of cases. She had never handled one quite like this. A licensed attorney, an officer of the court, who had constructed a parallel life so carefully that neither family had any reason to suspect the other existed. Linda filed for divorce and simultaneously reported James to the Illinois State Bar. The courtroom proceedings that followed were unlike anything the Chicago family court had seen in years. James arrived with a team of 3 attorneys, which told the judge everything she needed to know about how seriously he was taking the situation. His legal strategy was aggressive. He argued that his arrangement with Karen in Cincinnati had never been a legal marriage, that the ceremony had been a private commitment ceremony with no official documentation, and that therefore Rachel remained his only legal spouse, and the divorce should proceed as a standard dissolution of marriage. Linda Cross dismantled that argument in under an hour. She presented the investigator's findings in full. She submitted photographs of the Cincinnati house, records of joint accounts held under James's alias, documentation of school enrollment forms signed by James Merritt listing himself as the father and legal guardian, and a copy of a formal ceremony certificate signed by a minister and 2 witnesses 9 years earlier. She then called Karen Simmons to testify. Karen had been contacted by Linda's team 2 weeks before the hearing. She had driven up from Cincinnati alone. She sat in the witness box with the composure of someone who had spent 2 weeks processing a devastation she was still not finished processing. She answered every question clearly and without hesitation. She testified that she had believed herself to be legally married. She testified that James had handled all of their official paperwork personally, always explaining that his legal expertise made it easier for him to manage those details himself. She testified that she had never had any reason to doubt him. The courtroom was very quiet when she finished. James's attorneys attempted to redirect. They questioned the validity of the Cincinnati ceremony. They suggested Karen had been aware of James's existing marriage and chosen to proceed regardless. Karen looked at the attorney asking the question and said 4 words that ended that line of argument entirely. She said she had not known. Judge Eleanor Hayes had been on the family court bench for 21 years. She was known for her precision and her complete lack of patience for dishonesty in her courtroom. She had read every document submitted by both sides before the hearing began. When she spoke, she was brief and direct. She granted the divorce on every ground Rachel had filed under. She awarded Rachel the family home, full custody of both children, and a financial settlement calculated to include a fair share of assets James had accumulated under both identities during the marriage. She issued a formal referral to the state's attorney regarding the bigamy question and a separate referral to the Illinois State Bar regarding James's fitness to continue practicing law. James Whitfield lost his law license 8 months later. Rachel Whitfield still teaches 8th grade English. Her students do not know what she went through. They know her as the teacher who is harder on them than any other teacher in the building and who genuinely seems to believe every single one of them is capable of something worth doing. She is not remarried. Karen Simmons moved back to her hometown in Kentucky with her son. She did not pursue separate legal action. She said in a brief statement that she simply wanted to move forward. 2 women, 2 families, 1 man who believed he was clever enough to keep them both. He was wrong. If this story moved you, consider subscribing to Justice Journals. Every week, we bring you real courtroom cases that remind us that the truth, no matter how carefully someone tries to bury it, has a way of finding the light.